The Sony FX3 has been hands down the best investment I've made in my filmmaking career over the last 4 years. I've utilized the FX3 in hundreds of projects, both commercially, and everything you see on this YouTube channel, all my personal work, is 95% shot on the FX3. Up until now, I think out of all the cameras produced, it's probably the best bang for your buck in terms of size and quality you get from the camera's sensor. It's just so small, so customizable, and honestly, the perfect camera for solo creators. And in today's video, I just want to talk about how I set up the camera and also a few accessories and other ways that I get the most out of this small package. Okay, so first let's talk about settings. I have my camera set up on PP8, picture profile number 8, and I've got it set to S-Log3 and S-Gamut3 Cine. If you're just getting started, log is basically just a stripped down, more raw version of your video files compared to your traditional Rec 709 or something that already has colors baked in. Shooting in log allows you to capture more dynamic range, and then in post-production or your editing software, you can go ahead and then tailor everything depending on how you like in the color grade and really make your footage look your flavor or your taste. Shooting in S-Gamut3 Cine allows you to shoot in 422 10-bit, which is a color space that is really dynamic. It's got a lot of versatility and a lot of flexibility, and allows you to capture more of those highlights, more of those shadows, and allows you more information to work with in your color grade later. I've got PP8 basically locked at all times on the FX3, but when you set it up, you'll notice that on your monitor or on your screen, the colors will look a little washed out. That's because you need to add a Rec 709 conversion LUT. In your FX3, you can actually go into your settings and select an automatic picture profile correction, which basically takes whatever log you're taking, it detects it, and then puts on a Rec 709 conversion. So on your monitor, on your screen, it'll just look like a regular colored profile. Once I've got that set up, I'll go into my settings and also select grid lines for my camera. Grid lines basically splits your camera's view into thirds, and this is really useful, especially when you're shooting stuff for social content and you want to shoot both horizontal and then know where your vertical crop lines are later. Having grid lines on is just a super big lifesaver. For specific camera settings, I oftentimes find myself flipping between 24 frames per second, 30 FPS, or 60 frames per second for slow motion shots. The FX3 is really nice because you can map each of these settings to M1, M2, and M3 for quick recall. So for M1, I have it set to 30 frames per second and 1/60 for the shutter speed. You basically just double it for the 180-degree rule. For M2, I've got it set to 60 FPS and then 1/120 for the shutter speed. And then for M3, I've got it set for 24 frames per second and 1/150th. This is super useful if you're shooting by yourself or in small crews all the time, and you quickly want to switch between shooting some scenes in slow motion or the scenes at regular speed. You can even have like a slow shutter thing set to M3 if you'd like, at like a really slow FPS. Whatever you'd like, these quick custom menu items are really useful and I highly recommend them. And finally, in terms of file format, there are two that I toggle between all the time and each serve a different purpose. Most of the time, I have my camera set to XAVC S4K, and this is a bit of a compressed file size. And when you're shooting a lot of vlog style stuff, social media kind of stuff, or even for like YouTube, I like to use this file format because it allows for smaller file sizes. You can record more at once. And if you shoot a lot of content and want to minimize down in your storage, this is the file size that I recommend. For all my commercial work, I use XAVC SI 4K, and this is an uncompressed file format. It's a bit larger than the other one, but it allows for just a bit higher of a bit rate. It's basically a lot easier to use on your editing software because it's uncompressed. You don't need to use proxies and all that. And honestly, it's a very easy file format to work with. It's just a bit larger in file size. So I don't shoot everything with this. When I'm shooting some like really cinematic scenes in my vlogs or in my videos, or I'm working on commercial sets, this is the file format that I'll use. The only caveat is in order to shoot this, you need a pretty fast SD card. The one that I recommend is by PowerGrade. It's the V90. It's one of the best cost performance SD cards available. Otherwise, you need to get like a Sony Tough card or a much higher kind of like Kingston or faster SD card. They can get a little bit pricey. I usually have two 256 gigabyte cards in my FX3. And finally, in terms of settings, whenever I shoot, I like to record to both SD card slots at the same time. The dual SD card slots on the FX3 are one of the most underrated features. I do this for a very specific reason. I've actually had a couple incidents on commercial shoots where I was shooting to just one single SD card, and for whatever reason, it corrupted and I lost all the files on that SD card. Since those incidents, I always record to both SD card slots at the same time. So basically you have a backup of each SD card at all times, and it just gives you peace of mind, especially when you're shooting on commercial shoots and you don't want to lose your footage at any cost. You realize shooting a log that you're going to end up using a lot of storage really quickly. And one thing I like to use are these Samsung T7 portable SSDs, these solid state drives. These are great. They're really small, really portable. They're a little bit expensive, but I have the 4 terabyte version and I've got a bunch of these, and I just like to store basic active copies of projects and stuff that I'm currently shooting. I use these all the time. They're super handy. And if you shoot a lot of log footage, you're definitely gonna need a number of these or just some sort of large file storage system. Before we move into the rigging of my FX3, let me take a quick second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Motion Array. Motion Array is an amazing platform that basically has everything you need to create really high quality videos. From video templates, presets, motion graphics, LUTs. I use them all the time in my commercial and personal projects. One of their most useful features for me is their Motion Array library plugin for Premiere Pro. The Motion Array library extension is super useful for quickly going through all of Motion Array's templates, transitions, and basically anything they have in their library available to quickly drag and drop into your project. You can go up to filters here and select things based on their category, resolution, or orientation. Let's say I want to go ahead and incorporate either some typography or a title, so I'll just go ahead and select this. And then if I go in here, I can go ahead and select any of these titles to incorporate into my project. Let's say I like one of these looping titles. All I have to do is just click and then it'll open up all the different options from which I can just click and drag into my timeline. Once you've got your asset dragged into your timeline, you can quickly adjust this and really fine tune it to however you like. If you go up here to your properties and then select either edit text, these are all easily adjustable. And if you like, you can change the colors, shape, transform. It's all super customizable, and any of the assets you download can be easily adjusted and fine tuned to fit your project. The Motion Array library plugin is honestly such a game changer. It saves me so much time from having to go to the website to download anything. I can just load it up really quickly and click and drag and adjust any of my projects super quickly. Thanks again, Motion Array, for sponsoring this video. If you want to check them out, click the link down in the description below. Okay, in terms of gear that I add to the FX3, I actually like to keep my solo shooting rig as small as possible because I'm doing a lot of stuff on my own. I don't need an external monitor all the time. And when I'm on a commercial shoot and I do need an external monitor, one of my favorite things is the Monitor Plus app. It can connect via Bluetooth directly to your FX3. Super easy to set it up. And it's got a lot of great pro features, as well as it's super easy to monitor live as you're recording. You can use your iPhone, iPad, whatever is easiest for you. And it's a really easy way to just quickly actively monitor your shooting angles, everything you need for your client to be on set. And it's a really cheap and easy option compared to buying a separate monitor and transmitter receiver package. In terms of audio, my favorite microphone is a Sony ECM M1 microphone. You can plug it directly into the hot shoe of your camera. You don't need any additional cables. I've got it set most of the time just to auto and just slightly directional. You can change it to different angles depending on where you want your sound source from. It's super useful. I've usually got the FX3 in this small rig cage. This cage is really useful because it allows for multiple different mounting points, and also allows for you to easily attach it to most tripods, which is one of my favorite features. Okay, so in terms of lenses that I love to pair it with the FX3, as a solo shooter, you find yourself not wanting to carry around so many different lenses on all your shoots. You typically want to bring maybe just a couple, a handful, and 80% of the time I find myself shooting with the Sony G Master 24mm f1.4. The shallow f1.4 depth of field coupled with that 24mm pretty wide angled field of view is such a unique look, and it's something that I come back to all the time for my A-roll, for a lot of my cinematic work. When I'm not using the 24mm, oftentimes I like to use either the 35mm f1.4, just a little bit tighter of a G Master compared to the 24, or if I really want a pretty punched in, almost medium format look, I'll use the 50mm f1.2. This lens is pretty beefy, but it's really amazing. The autofocus is tack sharp. It's such an incredible lens. You get a pretty unique fall off with this lens, and it's not for all of the shots. It's a little bit tight. It's a little bit too much at f1.2 sometimes, but the look you can get from this is unmatched. It's incredible. You've seen me talk about this lens all the time, but I love the Laowa 10mm f2.8 autofocus lens. This super wide angle field of view is amazing for social content. So anytime I'm shooting horizontally or vertically, it's such a unique lens to have in your kit. When I'm not using the 10mm, I like to use the 16mm G lens. It's f1.8. It's also a Sony native lens, so the autofocus is really fast. It's really small. I made a whole video about this lens recently, but this lens is great for vlogging. It's great for content creation. And then oftentimes I also use this 70-300, which is a pretty nice budget lens in terms of of its price to kind of throw ratio. 70 to 300 is surprisingly useful. It doesn't have the f2.8, but for the price, you can't really complain. I love to use it for zoom shots or any sort of like larger landscape shots. You'll find it's a pretty useful lens, especially for the price. The VND that I use on all of my lenses is the Freewell magnetic VND. It's basically like a kit. I love this because it's such a large VND. So especially for the wide angle shots on my 10mm, I found that this filter is the only one that allows for a non-vignetted look on the 10mm just because it's so wide. So if you're not using a matte box, this VND is super useful. It's magnetic, so you can attach the 1 to 5 stop, or you can switch out to the 6 to 9 stop. And it's got a universal mounting kit, so you can attach it to any filter thread size, and it's just really useful. Now, when you're shooting solo, especially on a smaller rig like this, you'll notice that, especially shooting handheld, you'll get these micro jitters. And a lot of times I like to find myself shooting on the internal stabilization. Standard is typically what I have this set to. I don't find myself using active stabilization all that much just because it crops in, I think like 5 or 10% into your actual frame, which I find a little bit annoying. So more often than not, I just have my camera locked basically to standard unless I'm doing tripod shots or I've got this rigged up somewhere. I typically just have it on standard. Even when I'm shooting, on all of my shoots, I love to take a gimbal, and the gimbal that I'm using currently is the DJI RS3 Pro. The RS3 or the RS4 are really great gimbals by DJI. I love them because you can just really quickly set them up. They're relatively small and they pair really nicely in terms of strength with the FX3 in this kind of like small form factor. And another cool feature about the small rig cage is you can quickly mount this vertically. So for all my social content, I've just got this screwed in vertically. It's really small, really light, and there's really no issues in terms of balancing and power on the DJI RS3 Pro. So yeah, that's basically how I have my FX3 set up at all times. Obviously I shoot in S-Log3, so I love to color grade my footage when I bring it back into post. Oftentimes I'll be using either my LUTs or my PowerGrade, both available down below in my store. But S-Log3 is just so fun to play with, and you can really push and pull it any which way you'd like. And I've found that overall, in terms of quality and size, this camera is just an amazing piece of equipment to use. If I were to think about anything that I've invested over the last 4 years in terms of its return, this camera system is probably the best investment that I've ever made. For people who prioritize quick setups, small rigs, and really versatile camera packages, I can't highly recommend the FX3 enough. I've been shooting on it for 4 years now, and honestly, I don't have many complaints about it. I'm excited for the next generation, the next iteration, but for now, I'm still using it daily, and I don't have many complaints. If you have any questions on any of my settings, any of the gear, leave them down below. If you made it to the end of the video, leave the word solo so I know that you're a real one. Again, if you're interested in my LUTs, my PowerGrade, my sound effects, they'll be all linked in my store down below. And thanks again for sticking around to the very end. I'll see you guys in the next one.